Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Inspired Action, where we dive into the most pressing leadership challenges and hope to inspire you to take a more coach-centered and people-focused approach to leadership. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and it's time to get started with our three amazing guests for today. Welcome to another episode of Inspired Action. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and I'm here with three more incredible guests today to answer this question. How do you handle situations where your emotions or biases affect your leadership? But first, a quick intro. We have with us today, first and foremost, Nelson Almanzar. Nelson, founder of WWIN Innovations. He is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, a recent UCF, University of Central Florida, right, Nelson? Grad with his master's in cybersecurity and privacy. He specializes in human-centered design, AI strategy, and secure systems with a focus on making emerging technologies more usable, trustworthy, and adoptable. Portia Parker Griffin. Portia is founder and CEO of Fly High Coaching, where she helps organizations attract, engage, and retain high-caliber professionals through tailored consulting, training, and coaching programs. Portia holds numerous industry certification and is a host of Career 101 podcast. Let's say that right. She is also a professional certified coach through the International Coach Federation and has been recognized as a top voice and career expert by LinkedIn. Paula Miles, last but not least, an experienced leader boasting a stellar 30-year career as an energy utility executive and a sought-after mentor. Paula, too, is an ICF professional certified coach, an accredited team coaching practitioner, and a licensed professional engineer in the state of Texas. She's currently in her second career as a principal coach and leadership services consultant with the PE Miles Group, serving clients reflecting America's diversity across industry and in age, race, ethnicity, and gender, ranging from high potential individual contributors and frontline supervisors to C-suite executives and the board of directors. I cannot wait to hear from each of you. So let's get started. And since we didn't really flip a coin to get started, let's just jump right in with Nelson, man. How do you handle situations where your emotions or biases affect your leadership?
Yeah, I love this question. When I got it, it felt very relatable because it's a practice, something that I would start with. It depends. It depends on, right? It's situation dictates, but it really does depend on the scenario and but most importantly, your level of self-awareness. And I think experience is the biggest teacher. And I'll give an example, a small example, even when you're dealing with customer service, things like that, where you want some to get over some hurdle. And those are like moments where you can, if you have the self-awareness of an emotion when things don't go your way, or and it's being able to. What I've learned is in whether it's dealing with customer service or something more severe, a partner, a friend, family, or at work, it's being able to know when to pause and like, okay, this is what's going on. What am I? Where am I interpreting things? What's recognizing that the soon as the emotions begin to rise or the bias. And when I think of bias, it's my way of thinking, and that's the only way, or or from my own perspective.
Yeah.
It's being able to pause and examine. And so I would say that's a continuous practice where the situation acts as I would say a learning lesson or an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, that awareness piece is absolutely critical, right? As emotions are clues for us, right?
Yes,
Awesome.
yes.
Let's jump over to Portia. Portia, what would you add to that answering the question? How do you handle situations where your emotions or biases might affect or impact your leadership?
Yes, Kyle, I think about a few things. So, the first thing that I try to focus on is the main goal of the whole situation, right? So, what is the goal of what we're doing or trying to accomplish? And then, based on that goal, I consider if I'm being objective with my own thoughts or rationale. And I also like to think about if I'm being influenced by other people or ideas, which I think is common for everyone. We have voices in our head and think of things. And when we stop and reflect, we notice that those aren't even our thoughts, right? So I might ask myself a question like, is this my original thought, right? Then I try to think about any areas where I might be emotionally invested or biased, right? So, in that, I look at my physical reactions, right? So, what is my heartbeat like? Is my heart racing? Am I sweating, right? Those are just some clues. A lot of my clients, describe getting that feeling in the pit of your stomach, right? All of those emotional reactions might be a clue that you are emotionally invested in this situation, perhaps, to a negative degree. All right. After that, I'm a researcher. So, after we've done those kind of head and heart kind of check ins, I might do some research, right, to make sure that our leadership strategy is sound, right? And we might weigh the pros and the cons of different alternatives, right? So, that might involve thinking about, right, the positives. So what's the best or ideal outcome in this situation? I might ask myself that. I think asking questions is so important. Another great one is, can my team and I actually achieve these outcomes, right? Then you would want to reflect on the other end, right? So what are the negatives or the worst outcomes? And then what's the probability of these things, right? What's the probability that we have a positive outcome, and what's the probability that we have an unwanted or perhaps negative outcome?
Yeah.
If I kind of move through all of that and I'm still unsure about how I'm handling things, I might discuss the situation with a trusted colleague. If I go this route, I make sure that the person I'm asking for advice or just bouncing ideas off of is not directly involved in the situation, so they aren't biased themselves. So for this reason, I try to not ask, family members or close friends because they're innately biased, right? So
That's
those
right.
are just a few things that I might do.
I love it. And piggybacks on, Nelson talking about awareness, but you kind of took it to a different level, especially with the physicality of that. And those clues can be huge indicators, even if we're not processing exactly what we're feeling in the moment, right? A lot of times fear and excitement can show up physically the same, but we gotta process what it is. And so I think it's always that step towards awareness as opposed to avoidance. And I think that's a lot of what you were talking about is all those different ways is to explore that. I love it. Paula, what would you add to this conversation answering that question and how you handle situations where emotions or biases might impact your leadership?
Yes, well, first, let me say this that Nelson and Portia are really tough acts to follow there. They hit really good points that I thought about as well. And I'm really grateful to have had the time to have the question ahead of time. So when I began to think about how it would respond to this, I thought about kind of the end in mind, and that is the effect on leadership. And in the end, emotional awareness and bias management are not these side skills at all. They're really central to effective leadership
Yeah.
because they create the space for clarity, connection, and trust to grow. And those are the kinds of environments that we want to have for the people that we lead, heck, that we want to be able to operate in,
Yeah.
because that's where performance thrives. And we are about thriving and not just existing. And so when I thought about that, the other thing that I heard Nelson say was the power in the pause, recognizing what you're feeling. So for me, understanding where I feel those emotions in my body and being able to pause and figure out, okay, well, so what's going on with this? Why am I feeling this way? And generally, emotions give us great information. But what I like to say to people is that emotions don't get to dictate how we respond or how we react. So awareness is important for that. So, what is this emotion trying to tell me? And then I reflect and go a little deeper. Okay, this is what's happening, or that's what's happening. And then stepping back. So then it may be, okay, how do I manage this? Sometimes it may be, you know what? I tell you what, let's park this for a minute. Or, hey, this is a good time to take a break. And I go off and collect myself so that I can come back in full form. Um, when I notice that maybe bias is creeping in, I try to meet it with compassion and curiosity. What's coming up? What's driving this? So that piece of it too is really important, that curiosity. And when I make a mistake, which we do, which I have, um, I try to model growth in
Yeah.
that, explore what happened. I acknowledge it. If I have to, apologize or repair or fix, then I do that. And it's really when I'm working with teams of people, and being vulnerable in that way, it really models how others can do the same thing. We're all human.
Mhm.
We all get to work together. And that's really how I approach it.
Yeah, I love it. It's so much in that, nicely tied together with a little bit of everybody, right? I think I hear awareness. I hear we all, I think, appreciate the power of the pause, right? Sometimes underestimate it, even just kind of stepping back from that and really thinking about our thinking, right?
Mhm.
And recognizing what's going on, what's really creating the emotional charge in this moment. I'm curious, what's one personal trigger that you've learned to manage better as a leader over your career? What's one personal trigger that you feel like you have learned to manage better over your career? Paula, you want to kick it off? We'll just go back in reverse order and let Nelson finish.
Mm, a personal trigger. Um, I think it is not feeling heard.
Mm,
If someone is not listening to me, um, um, and not just in a business situation, but my husband will say, "Yep, that's exactly what it is." Not feeling heard, and it's kind of that all in listening, the kind of thing that we really focus on as coaches and those who are in this helping kind of businesses
yeah.
that we do. It's being not feeling heard.
What message do you feel like that sends to you? What's the message for people watching so they can resonate with this too? Because I think that's very common, right? I really do. What's the message that you take that to mean when you feel like you're not being heard?
That I don't matter,
Yeah,
that what I'm saying isn't important. And yeah, I can't put it any more simply than that. That's it.
yeah. Well, yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, that's vulnerable to take it to that next level, but that's where the emotion is really charged, right? It's not that somebody's not listening to you. Half the time we couldn't care less if somebody's not listening to us. But when I don't feel heard and that's connected or attached to an emotion around I don't matter, that's deep,
Mhm.
right? And that's what triggers that. And then we, react accordingly. I love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing that. Portia, let's jump over to you. Same question. What's a trigger maybe you've learned to manage a little bit better throughout your career? Something that may charge you, may charge you still, that's fine. But what do you think?
I think that one of the biggest triggers that I've had to work through is not jumping in and trying to save the day. And
Mhm.
as a coach, I know we all have that experience. And particularly, I really was present to this, Kyle, when I went through my IPEC training. And I know we went through the
Mhm.
same coach training program, but if I perceive something as unjust, and specifically if someone's like manipulating or something, even though I'm an introvert and an observer, that usually kind of triggers me to have a solution, come in and save the day from something unjust that's going on. But throughout, you know, going through coach training, working with clients over the last decade or so, I've realized that it's not always up to me to jump in and save the day. And sometimes there's a lesson going on. Sometimes there's some other awareness or experience that someone else needs to have in that situation. So I think that's perhaps my personal trigger.
Yeah, Super Portia is going to fly in and save everybody. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's really, really, really a good one. Nelson, what would you add to the mix in here?
Really great topics from both of you. I would say managing my own expectations when things don't go as planned or as I expect, and it's this all or nothing thinking, and that leads to frustration and or abandonment of said project or said engagement with a person generally, and so I would say, yeah, it's being able to say this is okay too, and have that internal conversation as soon as possible, even before seeing results or having that moment where you're seeing some sort of expecting an outcome. And so that's taught me to be, I don't know, it's practice. It's a practice on self-compassion, and being open to other opportunities, right? It's like things don't have to be this way, then that means it's going to be another way, and that trust factor, I think, has to be applied. And sometimes we don't have that reach for the trust, but again, coming back to the pausing, it's like, all right, let me take another look at this or examine my own thinking, my own emotional tendency or wanting to react.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you said that. I was going to share it. Mine has been having expectations of others to execute or deliver in the exact same way that I would, without any kind of communication around it. Right. You know, it's like, oh yeah, you're going to do that. Cool. And then it's not done, or it's taken longer or whatever. And you're like, what? All you have to do is this. And other people, unless you have engaged that and communicated how you want something to be done, or you understand how they would approach it, it's so triggering to impose our expectations on other people and them not have the same expectations. Right. And so really you talk about learning to pause and dial that back and communicate at a different level. I think that is huge. Well, you guys, that I know we could talk about this probably for at least another hour and wish we had more time. I so appreciate you guys making time for joining us here on Inspired Action. We will be signing off for now, but please join us every Thursday at noon Central on LinkedIn and just about any time on our YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us and connect with us. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Well, that's a wrap for another edition of Inspired Action, the Leadership Forecast. We're so grateful for our guests today and the impact they're making with the work they do. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel to watch the longer version of this episode, and be sure to like, comment, connect with, and follow me and each of our guests. You'll find all of our links in the caption of this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in every Thursday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for new episodes.